right, we are live at Ohio Healthcare Association. My name is Peter Murphy Lewis. I'm your host, and I am joined today with Jill Herron. She's the administrator at Welcome Nursing Home. Jill, welcome to the program.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Jill, we're already got things going live on the showroom. I'm interested in who was the first person that you wanted to hug yesterday or today when you showed up that you haven't seen in 6 months or a year?
Dave Hennis was one of my biggest fans, and he's been such a great mentor, and he checked on me all through my presidency with OHCA, even though we couldn't be together. So when I saw him today, I mean, we did a nice big long hug.
I love it.
Way overdue.
Part of my team that's here, I'd never met in person. We've all been remote, and people warned. They said, "Hey, be careful." I think Peter, because he wears pink scrubs, he's a big hugger, and I did. I went up and hugged everybody.
It's
like
great.
Dave.
Yep.
I want to get to know you as a person, Jill, because I think one of the key ways for us to stand out as an industry and combat the staffing crisis we have is we talk about the person. This is a human-to-human industry. So I'd like to get to know your long-term care initiation story. Do you remember the first day or the first week that you stepped into a community, or the first time you realized, I want to test this out?
Yeah, well, I will tell you, I don't remember that day because literally I was born into the industry. My parents owned and operated a second-generation skilled nursing facility. My grandparents started it back in 1945. My dad was the administrator in the 60s, and my mom was the director of nursing, and I was their first child. So when my mom went back to work after having me, literally my crib was in their office. And so I don't remember that day. I do remember going to college and getting a degree in sociology and focused in elder research and helped professors do some research, ended up getting a master's degree in long-term care administration. And so I thought, I am going to give this a try. I know a little bit about the industry because I literally grew up in it, worked as a maintenance guy, did the lawn, did the filing, and just kind of felt it would be maybe an easy industry because I knew a little bit about it, and took a job in the Dayton area. And the minute I started there, I really knew this was more than just a job. It was really a passion.
I want to ask you about a specific memory, and maybe a specific memory before you knew that you were going to get into long-term care. Maybe you were 10 and you remember a resident saying something to your mom or your dad, or maybe you had a resident who looked at you and you almost thought that was your grandmother because of the way they treated you. Is there anything that stands out saying like, man, this was special and it still makes me smile today?
Yep, I remember it very clearly. I was 16 years old, so I had my driver's license. And my dad and mom had a small all-women's nursing home. It was like 18 ladies that lived together. And my dad said, if you're working for me this summer, I need you to be the assistant activities director it was called Tressie's. And I was like, Dad, no, come on, just let me mow the lawn and file. He's like, nope, that's where I need you. And so with resistance, I went and started that position. But that was the moment that I was like, I adore these people. We had so much fun, whether it was just sitting and reading with someone or painting someone's nails or coordinating a big party. Just loved that interaction.
I want to ask you about the intangibles. What about long-term care has changed who you are, either as a mother or as a neighbor or as a daughter? I know that working with seniors has changed the way that I look at life and the way that I raise my son. Has it changed anything about you?
I do. I think it has given me a much broader perspective on life in general. I think you talk to older people, you just assume like, oh, they've had this great life, but when you really get to know them as people, they've had struggles, they've had challenges, but yet they overcome those. They are, whether it's a physical ailment at the time or a mental ailment, you can still see how life developed them as a person, and everybody's so unique. So I think just having an acceptance of human beings as to who they are and how life has molded them, either for the positive and sometimes for the negative, but how they've overcome those things.
Jill, I just got off of a cruise ship last week for Nurses Week, and one of the questions that I didn't always ask, but I learned a lot from this question was, what did you learn about yourself during COVID? Either the way that you handle stress or the way that you communicate, or what you don't need or what you do need in life. What did you learn about yourself, leading an organization that, was most impacted by COVID and what the industry that we're in?
I think the biggest thing that stands out is you've got to surround yourself with good, solid people and good partners. COVID is. I think back on those 2 years, and we're still dealing with it. But the team that I had around me that 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 held each other up, it was like a war zone. It really was. I mean, I think back and just visualizing some of the experiences that we had with moving people around and ripping them out of their rooms because we had to have a quarantine unit and a isolation unit, and I just the things that we did. But I'm telling you, the reason we were successful is because of the committed, strong team people that I had on my team. And I think it just reinforced how important it is to have really good, committed coworkers and team members.
When I think of an ideal frontline caregiver, I envision almost like values that the same way I ran or raise my son, or the values that my wife and I have, and grit and passion. What kind of attributes do you look for when you're going to hire a frontline caregiver, or you're going to empower someone to take on more leadership? What does that role look like for you?
I think one of the things is they've got to be presentable. They've got to be communicative and presentable, because if you're not willing to present yourself in a positive light, you're not going to have those same expectations for when you're caring for somebody else. I remember so clearly, this was so many years ago, but one of our residents was going out with a family member, and my aide came running down the hall and out the door, and she's like, "Wait a minute, you forgot your lipstick." And that was as important as, making sure she had clothes on. Like, that, it was important to the resident, and it was important to the aide to make sure that she was going out in the way that made her feel as much of a full person as possible. I mean, that lipstick was critical.
One of the, ahead of time before this, I asked you to share an important quote, and you gave a funny one about things that will pass. Would you tell me what it is and why you thought of that?
Yeah, I have a lot of quotes up in my office, and I've created a poster that kind of I read regularly. And the one in the middle of the poster is, "This too shall pass. It may pass like a kidney stone, but it will pass." And I think, that it just kind of wraps it up. I mean, we deal with some really hard things. COVID was especially hard, but hard circumstances with residents come up every day. Families that are not on the same page, where they're have different opinions on how their parents should be dealing with end of life, or staff members that have very challenging home lives. So there's challenges and hard things that you deal with every day. And I think reminding yourself that it might feel like the end of the world, but it will pass, and brighter things will come.
That type of quote makes me think that that your leadership style is very well balanced, even keel, and kind of, what's the word? I guess I don't know the word. Probably optimistic. How would you describe your leadership, or how would your team describe your leadership?
Yeah, I try to be optimistic. I will tell you, as I have aged, I was always told that I'm a Pollyanna and I only want to see the positive things. And I think you have to, or this industry would beat you down. But there are so many wonderful things that happen every single day. Sometimes you have to look for them. But I do think you have to have a positive attitude and a positive energy for the future. So much of what we do is out of our control. Many of the regulations, the requirements, through COVID, the changing of the requirements, like, almost felt like daily, to stay on top of that. But really, to try to be optimistic and move forward, because the bottom line is, we're dealing with human beings, we're dealing with people, and we have a responsibility to keep that environment as as positive and as uplifting as possible.
I want to go back to the type of frontline caregiver that you described, and I like the way that you talked about being presentable, because I'd never heard that answer before, but it does make sense to me. I'm wondering who that person has a name in your inside your community. That person's a real person. You're thinking of someone probably. Let's give a shout out to them, and I don't expect you to name off every single person on your staff, so please don't be offended if you weren't named. But that person is someone. Who is that for you?
Well, in my halls right now, I mean, people that come to mind are Kennedy and Marie Patterson and Amber Barker, who just was fantastic. Unfortunately, she recently relocated, and we're missing her, but she'll be a great caregiver no matter where she lives. Some of our nurses, Desiree and Susan Pinkley, and my director of nursing, Sarah Stevens, my partner, Heidi Fries, my sister. We were in a business together. We've just got a great team, and I couldn't be more proud of my extended team.
But Joe, before we go to the rapid fire questions, I'm going to read one quote to you because I think you're going to have a good answer. And it's a quote from a football player, Ray Lewis. And it says, they pay me for Monday through Saturday. Sundays are for free because that's the day that he plays. What's your Sunday? What's your favorite part of the job that, you know what, you said, if I had to do this for free for the next 10 years, I'll still do this?
Yeah, I will tell you, we were having some staffing challenges, and I had no activity person in the building that day. And I know nursing homes get a lot of bad rap for just doing bingo, but I'm telling you that bingo is one of the biggest events that happen. And everyone was like, well, I guess we're going to have to cancel bingo because we don't have anybody to coordinate it. And I raised my hand. I said, you know what? I'm calling bingo today. And it was the highlight of my COVID experience. It truly was. I mean, the residents showed me how to do it because, of course, they use an iPad now, which who knew? And they had these little sayings after, B2 and the 2 and all these things. So I didn't know any of those rules, but they led me right along, and we had the best day. And I think if anybody's coming into this business, they know that's going to be a lot of challenges, but you've got to remember why you're there, and spending time with the residents, going out on a field trip, taking someone down to read a book, just even for a short time, it just revalidates why we're in this business.
Yes. Amen. I'm going to take a quick break just to thank one of our sponsors, and then we will get started with rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Want to connect with leaders in long-term care? Go to www.ltcheroes.com to join our community on Facebook and LinkedIn. Get exclusive access to marketing tips, SOPs, and insights from prominent voices in the industry. Only at ltcheroes.com. All right, let's start off with rapid fire questions, and I'm going to throw my favorite one at you first.
Oh, dear.
Which is, if you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it that millions of people are going to see over the course of 3 months or 6 months, what's the billboard going to say and why?
Just keep working. Just keep working, no matter what it is. I think whether it's in healthcare, in sports, in life, just keep working, because I think sometimes we can get really down, and just know that one step forward is a step forward.
Fantastic. Do you have a book or books that you've recommended or gifted more than others?
I'm reading one right now. I can't think of it's called there's one that I was given as take the E out of ego or something like that.
I think that's it. I've read that about a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what's the one I'm finishing right now? I can't remember it. It's The Untethered Soul. Okay. So that is one that I've really worked hard to take notes with, because I'm going to summarize it so that I can really look at it. Lots of business leadership books, and I try to keep focused on that as much as possible.
Well, we need to pass that down because most people younger than the two of us aren't reading books any longer. We need to
No.
keep it going.
I agree.
My last question for you, Jill, is do you have a favorite failure of yours? Something that you got punched in the gut and you didn't know if you're going to get back up again, but now you're a stronger woman and a stronger leader for your team.
Absolutely. We just talked about it last night. It was 2008, and I had an IRS agent come to my door, and I had found out that our accountant had not been paying our the employer side of taxes, and we owed a lot of money. And I had no idea, as a single family facility, how we were going to dig out of that. And with a lot of tenacity and planning and organizing and a lot of good consultation from outside folks, we were able to get back and have a process in place that will never happen again. And I also learned there's, like I said, I've talked a lot about good team members, but I think as a leader, there's trust and then there's verify. And I think it's got to be a nice balance.
I want to thank you so much for joining us in LTC Heroes. Thanks to Kathy for putting us together.
Yeah.
Thanks to Heidi for putting us together. Thank you to Ohio Healthcare Association for inviting LTC Heroes. I look forward to connecting with you. Thank you for sharing your stories. It's inspiring. Hopefully, hopefully this will help for the people that aren't in long-term care to look at it. And thank you so much for your time.
You're so welcome. And thanks for doing this.
This episode of LTC Heroes is brought to you by Experience Care, the only long-term care software developed by EHR users and clinicians every step of the way. Visit experience.care/guarantee to get your free profitability consultation today.